The Canterville Ghost is written by Oscar Wilde. It is written in a literary form called a novella. In If we look at what a novella is, or what is the meaning of novella, in literature, a novella is a type of prose fiction which is shorter than full-length novels and longer than short stories. So it is actually shorter than those typical novels, but longer than short stories. So it's in between short stories and novels. It originates from an Italian word novella, which means new. If we look at it, it is a well-structured yet short narrative, often satiric or realistic in tone. It usually focuses on one incident, not so many subplots and all this. It usually focuses on one incident or issue with one or two main characters and takes place at a single location. So that is the form of a novella. And Oscar Wilde's book The Canterville Ghost is written in the form of a novella. It is not actually a novel, a novella. If we look at the introduction, it is, again, as I've said, it is written in the form of a literary form called a novella. About the author, Oscar Wilde was born on 15 October 1854. He was an Irish writer and poet and is remembered for his sparkling humor. Canterville Ghost is a typical example of his light-hearted and richly imaginative style. Wilde was an outstanding student and had a brilliant track record throughout his academic years. If we look at the writing of Oscar Wilde, his first play was Vera, but it was not well received, and Wilde returned to England and continued to deliver lectures after publication of Vera, which was actually not really successful. And later it was followed by The Happy Prince and other short stories, Lord Arthur Saville's Crime and other short stories, and also The Picture of Dorian Gray. It was not actually, again, well received, but it later became a very popular book. And also The Importance of Being Earnest, An Idle Husband, and A Woman of No Importance. And later he was imprisoned, and in there he wrote a book called Ballad of Reading Jail. Now, The Canterville Ghost is written during the Victorian period. It is set in the Victorian period. Victorian period refers to the reign of Queen Victoria, which is from 1837 till 1901. So Victorian period was a period of prosperity for England. It was by and large a long period of great peace and prosperity for Britain. Studied more closely, however, the period reveals as a complex era of contrast where stability, progress, and social reform existed with poverty, injustice, and social upheaval. And we have many great Victorian novels, and one remarkable author which I would like to mention is Charles Dickens. He's one of a chief critic of this time, about this rapid rise of industrialization. So there was this a massive demarcation in the sense that the rich were getting richer and the poor were getting poorer, and the exploitation of the workers or the working class. So there was this poverty, injustice, and also social upheaval. Victorian period was also an age of restraint and contradictions. Victorian era was confronted by something frightening, that was the findings of Charles Darwin's theory, which which seemed to disprove the Bible or the very existence of God. There was suddenly this doubt, this confusions among people, and there was the need to define a strict code of moral conduct for all in order to maintain social balance, harmony, and control. The Victorians upheld a code of strict social conduct as well as a low tolerance of crime. However, despite all these moral conducts and all this, prostitution was also on the rise, as well as the increase in child labor. Another important landmark of the Victorian period is the influx of American money. So what is interesting is many rich American heiresses or rich women, came to England in search of titles. Now let's look at this. In England, they follow this monarchy. They have titles. If we look at the United States of America, there is no such thing as monarchy. But America was developing rapidly, and they had so much money. So in this period, rich American women were off to England, or they were in England, who came looking for titles. So this was one thing. Their money could not buy back home, and by marrying these British aristocratic families, they could get to boast of a title. For example, now if we look at Meghan Markle. So Meghan Markle, she is normally called as Meghan Markle, but now, since she is married to the prince in England, she is now called as I think Duchess of Sussex, although I really don't care about her. So this is the example. So by marrying their titles, they could get entrance to the upper levels of society, which normally would not accept them by virtue of their newfound wealth alone. So this is something which, even if they are rich, people will not really respect them. But when they have titles of these aristocratic families, they are given this platform in the upper levels of society. Let us look at the list of characters in the novella. We have Mr. Hiram B. Otis, Lord Canterville, Mrs. Otis, Washington Otis, Virginia Otis, the Otis twins, Mrs. Omney, the Ghost, and Cecil, the Duke of Cheshire. Let's try to familiarize with ourselves about each character before we delve into the story or the novella. So Mr. Otis is an American minister who purchases this Canterville chase from Lord Canterville. He is the husband of Mrs. Otis and father of Washington Otis, Virginia, and also the Otis twins. Lord Canterville is the one who sold Canterville Chase to the American minister, that is Mr. Hiram B. Otis. And Mrs. Otis, she was formerly called Miss Lucretia R. Tappan. She was a very popular figure during her time, and later on she was married to Mr. Hiram B. Otis. And we also have Washington Otis. Mr. and Mrs. Otis named Washington. Now, his name is significant in the sense that Mr. and Mrs. Otis named Washington after George Washington, once again revealing their overblown American patriotism. Washington is the elder brother of Virginia. He is the older brother to Virginia and the Otis twins. Washington is responsible for constantly removing the bloodstain on the sitting floor room of Canterville Chase, which we will look at it later on. Virginia Otis is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Otis and sister to Washington Otis and the Otis twins. By the end of the novella, she is married to the Duke of Cheshire, who has dreamed of and courted her for a long time. Virginia is also crucial in the story because she was the only one who has sympathy for the ghost, and that's something which we will be going through it together. And we have the Otis twins. They are also referred to as the Stars and Stripes, meaning twins. And we have Mrs. Omni, the elderly housekeeper at Canterville Chase. And we have the ghost, and he is none other than Sir Simon of Canterville. So Sir Simon is the main character in the Canterville Ghost. He is actually the ghost, and the title is named after him, the Canterville Ghost. He has been an inhabitant of the Canterville Chase all his life, and its ghost since 1584. Remember, he has been the ghost of Canterville Chase since 1584, when for some reason he killed his wife. He killed his wife. The reason why he killed his wife was because his wife did not know how to cook. Get to know about the details later on as we move on. Later on, he was murdered by his brothers-in-law, who starved him to death and left his body in a secret chamber within the estate. So from there, he was trapped, and he has been the ghost since 1854. So a quick recap: Virginia Otis and the ghost. These are the two main characters, Virginia Otis and the ghost. Sir Simon, the ghost, is the main character in the novella. He is the ghost who haunts Canterville Chase. He has been an inhabitant of the Canterville Chase all his life, and its ghost since 1584, after he was starved to death by his brothers-in-law. And then again, a quick recap: Virginia Otis. She's the only daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Otis. She is quiet and sensitive in her ways, and an excellent horsewoman, who is also called as the Amazon. Virginia is 15 years old when the story begins and described being as an Amazon. Reason being probably meaning she is tall, fit, and fearless. The Canterville Ghost is a light-hearted novella that parodies Gothic horror as well as cultural differences between the United States and the United Kingdom. So it parodies Gothic horror. I'm sure you must have watched parodies of so many films. For example, the vampires, Meet the Vampires, or Clash of the Titans, and all this. There are so many parodies making fun of them. So likewise, in the story, the Canterville Ghost novella, the Canterville Ghost is a light light-hearted novella that parodies Gothic horror. So Gothic horror, and that Gothic horror takes place in the Canterville chase. Dog is barking so loudly. My neighbors, I don't know what's going on, but do not get caught up with the dog. Just listen to me. Conventionally or typically, if we look at the character or the appearance of the ghost, we have not seen any ghost. We have only seen ghost in films or something like that. I haven't seen an actual ghost in my life, and the appearance and all this, I don't really believe in that. But we are sort of scared that unseen force we don't know. Here is the ghost, Sir Simon of Canterville, the ghost. He tries to scare the Otis family up to his best. However, he is not able to scare them. In fact, he is the one who in the end had to sort of stay away from them so that he will not be made fun of, he will not be played by the Otis twins. Nobody was afraid of him. So here in the story, instead of being scared of the ghost, we as readers, to get along with the Otis family, laugh at the ghost at his expense. So that is the plot. And as we keep on reading the story, we are made to sort of feel sorry for the ghost. And we feel sorry for the ghost in the end because of him, because of how he has been treated by the Otis family. Again, if we look at it, it is also a mixture of genres, not just a parody of Gothic horror, as well as it is also mixed with other genres. So it begins as a parody of romantic and Victorian Gothic horror stories. In the end, it ends as a rather sort of a fairy tale romance between this Virginia and the Duke of Cheshire. If we look at it, Wilde pokes fun at this genre of Gothic horror by creating this ghost who can be offended, get sick, and scrape his knees, essentially still a human being, subject to the laws of society. What is funny is, in this novella, the ghost is someone who gets offended, who also gets sick. Again, it also parodies American culture. Why? So on the one hand, Wilde seems to praise the American practical style of the Otis family, as they are not afraid of the ghost. On the other hand, Wilde also makes fun of their bluntness and their overly direct speech and lack of social grace. So they're just straightforward, they're direct, and they're so brand conscious. For example, Washington, this mode of capitalism, or this consumerism, or the love and faith they have in commercial products. This part of his parody is still appropriate even today. Washington Otis's insistence that he can and should remove the blood stain with Pinkerton Champion Stain Remover and Paragon detergent could easily be turned into American commercial for any popular laundry detergent today. So they are so into consumerism, they're so brand conscious, representing these typical American families. This is the introduction to the novella The Canterville Ghost. If we look at the historical context of The Canterville Ghost, the British Empire was continuing all throughout the world. The traditional power of monarchy in England was continually declining. It was lessening, or its importance was lessening. At the same time, that of the parliamentary government was growing. Under the reign of Queen Victoria in the 19th century, England underwent its final transitions to a constitutional monarchy. That means a system where monarchy operates under mandates set forth by a parliament. So with this, there was this shift in power towards the common man and the subsequent rise of the middle class. So at the same time, the aristocracy, along with its power and wealth, began to decline. And this is pivotal in the American family coming to England to purchase a house owned for centuries by aristocrats. If we look at the first chapter, Mr. Hiram B. Otis, an American minister, has purchased the Canterville Chase. Despite so many warnings, he did not pay any attention. He did not pay any heed to what other people advised him. Lord Canterville, being a very simple and honest man, told Mr. Hiram B. Otis that the house was haunted. And he informs Mr. Otis that the house comes fully furnished, but it also comes with a ghost that haunted it for centuries, making all of the inhabitants and also the servants very uncomfortable. If we look at it, the purchasing of the house or the chase, it might seem very common, nothing interesting, but during that time it was important in sense that back then the aristocrats simply they did not follow the tradition of selling their houses. So to Wilde's reader, or during that time, it would have been a reminder of this rapidly changing time, the decline or the waning of the aristocracy. Despite the warning, Mr. Otis laughed at Canterville's belief in haunting, saying that the Otis family comes from America, a modern country where no one believes in a thing called ghost. So he says that if there was a ghost in the house, the Americans will actually put it in a museum. Despite Lord Canterville's warning, Mr. Otis goes through with the purchase. Mr. Otis is so practical. He doesn't believe in supernatural powers. He is a practical man and believes that anything is possible, even putting ghosts in a museum. And at the end of the season, the Otis family moves into their new home, including Mrs. Otis, the couple's oldest son Washington, and their daughter Virginia, and also the Otis twins, affectionately called as the Stars and Stripes. And interestingly, as they approach the house for the first time, the weather turns from a lovely evening into a gloomy storm. It was also gloomy, also dark. They were met in the doorway by the housekeeper, Mrs. Umney, who was wearing a black dress. There's this change in weather as they reach the house. It is everything is gloomy, dark, scary. This is a common element of Gothic literature. So it suggests that whatever is horror is contained in the house is so unnatural, and the natural world must react against it. In the first chapter, we are also given a glimpse of Mrs. Otis, who is the wife of Mr. Hiram B. Otis. She is described as a middle-aged woman who, at once, was a very attractive woman. She's filled with a really wonderful amount of spirit, and she has a certain Englishness about her. Washington was patriotically named after George Washington, which we have come across earlier. Virginia is a girl of 15 who is lithe and lovely as a fawn. She takes pleasure in horse riding. The twins, again, they are just mischievous. They love to play. Simple as that. So, aside from Virginia and the twins, the majority of the Otis family barely factor into the story at all. As they were inside, one of the first things that the family noticed about their new home was the bloodstain on the fireplace. Mrs. Omni assured them that the bloodstain was centuries old, and it was kind of a tourist attraction to sort of to mark it as the spot where Sir Simon of Canterville was murdered in 1575. Here, Mrs. Omni adds further about Sir Simon the ghost himself disappeared from the house only a few years later, and his body was never found. His ghost has, however, haunted the house ever since. Washington Otis is unimpressed by these histories and instantly sets to work removing the stain from the fireplace. So the way Washington announces the name of the detergent feels artificial and out of place. He's almost like advertising the product to the story's reader, like Pinkerton's Champion Stain Remover and Paragon Detergent. The way he said it, it was like as if he was advertising for that brand to us, to the readers. And as Washington steps back to show off his work to the others, there was this loud crash of thunder sounds. And after that sounded, Mrs. Omni fainted. And as she fainted, Mr. and Mrs. Otis hold a serious conversation about how to deal with a fainting housekeeper. And Mr. Otis suggests that they will deduct the time spent fainting from her pay, which he believes will stop the fits quickly. And the moment Mr. Washington said that, Mrs. Omni quickly got up and his fainting and her fainting was all but gone, which is again really a funny incident. So this is the first chapter, and we will get to know more about it in the later part of the story.